And so this is one of those examples. We're going to go over again the public image versus the actual record, the fruits that we're supposed to judge by. And so, just some background, like myself, this was a hard thing for me to accept because Ronald Reagan was the president when I was a kid growing up, and I just loved his talks. And I was like in the second grade, and my dad pulled me out of school, and we're going to go to the state capitol. We're going to hear President Reagan speak. And so you got the nostalgia. You have that. You're hearing their words, and you're like, yeah, that's exactly right. And you find it really hard to believe that they would be doing something, not just not living up to the rhetoric, but the complete opposite of the rhetoric. So let's see what Reagan, what is the public image of Reagan, and then compare it to the record.
This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. The full power of centralized government. This was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose.
First of all, I think you must have some principles you believe in. In mine, I happen to believe in the people and believe that the people are supposed to be dominant in our society. That they, not government, are to have control of their own affairs to the greatest extent possible with an orderly society.
Well, Johnny, I think that one of the things is that people keep looking to government for the answer, and government's the problem.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
So you have the rhetoric of an anti-communist. Tear down this wall. Government's the problem, not the solution. I believe in empowering the people. That's what we think of when we think of Ronald Reagan. But there's a fantastic book called The Insiders by Jonathan McManus. I encourage you to all get a copy of and look, and it goes into even more detail than I'm able to go tonight on the record. But I think it's important for us to be able to go over that. What's the real Reagan? What's the real record of this man? And not just once he became president. Some people will say, well, yeah, he was scared because of that assassination attempt on him. Again, right, that false hero. Going back to even being governor of California, the record is the same. Started as governor of California, and he attended the Bohemian Grove rituals that we mentioned in the two previous boot camps. As governor, he raised taxes, introduced the communist manifesto plank of the graduated income tax. He introduced tax withholding from paychecks, so basically making every single employer in the state of California an agent of the government, taking money out of every individual's pocket instead of them having to actually write a check to the government and realize how much they're being manipulated and stolen from every single month. Raised sales taxes and taxes on business. So even as governor of California, his spending increased more than the other states, including a 61% in communist socialist welfare spending. He attacked, of course, Jimmy Carter when he was running for president for having CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, and trilateralists in his cabinet. But then after winning his first primary for the 1980 election, he replaced his campaign manager with a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and globalist William Casey. And then he appointed Casey as the head of the CIA once he became president. He ran ads that were critical of George Bush Sr.'s membership in the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. But then after, of course, winning the nomination, he stated that he would pick a running mate with his values. And who did he pick with his values? The CFR trilateralist George Herbert Walker Bush. He also appointed Council on Foreign Relations members, Ambassador Anne Armstrong, Senator Howard Baker, and Henry Kissinger as his foreign policy advisors, globalist as his foreign policy advisors. And then on election day, he appointed CFR members as Secretary of the Treasury and Secretary of Commerce. And then after stating that he opposed the Trilateral Commission because they were soft on national defense, he appointed a trilateral member as the Secretary of Defense. Okay, the real Reagan, right? We see he's just 5 months into his administration. His cabinet was packed with 257 members of the Council on Foreign Relations in senior positions such as heads of state and defense departments. He backed the U.S. taxpayer bailout of the Soviet satellite of Poland as Polish citizens were being imprisoned for supporting freedom. The Soviet Union wouldn't have lasted as long as it did if it was not for Ronald Reagan. Authorized the funding for nuclear steam turbines for the Soviet satellite of Romania and a steel plant for communist China. He sold arms to communist China. But when the free people of Taiwan wanted help, he denied it to them. He campaigned to cut the budget by $13 billion. In office, he actually increased it by 10 billion. I'm sorry, 110. Thank you for that correction. 110 billion. And then passed the largest tax increase in history up to that point of $227 billion. Doesn't sound like much of an anti-communist, anti-globalist when you look at his fruit versus his words.